Good afternoon, everybody. I do hope you can hear me well. Now, before we start, I'm Hayley Mackin. I'm the Head of Events, Community and Partnerships at the Queen Elizabeth Foundation, and I'd like to welcome you to today's Queen's Tea. Now, just some housekeeping. You are all currently muted. If you do need to contact the home team, please do so by using the chat button at the bottom of the screen. Alternatively, for the best view, if you use the top right-hand corner on your laptop, you can change this to speaker view. This will give you the best view of the event today. Alternatively, if you're on an iPad or on a phone, this is normally located at the bottom with the 3 dots. We're looking for the speaker view. Now, there's also as well an opportunity for you to take part in an auction today. We will be putting the link in the chat function. So by all means, click on that and take a look at some of the wonderful prizes that we have available. And there's also an opportunity for you to make a donation as well to support the Queen Elizabeth Foundation. This can be done through the link by buying us a gift or making a donation. Alternatively, within your Queen's Tea packs, you'll be able to find how to make a donation. So I believe a lot of you are here with us today. And for those who aren't, or for those who miss anything, please don't worry. We are recording the event and we will ensure that this gets to you. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Queen Elizabeth Foundation for Disabled People's Queen's Tea. Today, we celebrate the birthday of our late patron, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, who was born on this day, the 4th of August in 1900. So I can see you all, a lot of you in your gardens with your wonderful hats on. Let's sip our cocktails, toast our saucers of tea to celebrate this very special day. We have a jam-packed virtual event for you today, which includes a Q&A with Dame Esther Rantzen and a presentation from Hugo Vickers. Before we start, I'd like to say a huge thank you to the Banham Foundation for kindly sponsoring this year's Queen's Tea. Your support means the world to us and enables us to be able to put on events like this. So thank you. So before I hand over to QEF volunteer Philippa Beck, who's going to be interviewing Dame Esther Rantzen for us, let's officially open this year's event with a fanfare from the trumpeters of the Welsh Guard. Enjoy.
Well, hello everyone and welcome to the Queen's Tea in aid of the Queen Elizabeth Foundation. Today we're celebrating the birthday of our late patron, the Royal Highness Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. I hope you're all at home enjoying your lovely tea parties, your scones and cream and jam. And we are absolutely delighted today to have a very, very special guest with us, the wonderful Dame Esther Rantzen. So hello, Esther. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. I feel very privileged to be sitting here and talking to you over Zoom. You know, today we'll be talking about your incredible career in journalism, TV presenting, and your charity work. You were awarded your OBE for services to broadcasting, and then your CBE for services to children. And then in 2015, you became a Dame for services for children and for the older people, these are amazing honours to achieve. Do you have any lovely memories of receiving these honours, of meeting any of the royal family, or indeed ever meeting our late patron, the Queen Mother?
Well, I certainly met the Queen Mother. That was quite an interesting event. I took part in the Royal Variety Show.
Oh, fantastic.
Someone who had never heard me sing invited me to sing with Jan Leeming and Gloria Hunniford, both of whom can sing. So I should have pointed out that I had a slight problem with this, but anyway, I didn't. I was rather excited. Sang a song from Annie Get Your Gun.
Yeah.
Which was anything you can do, I can do better. And we had a dance routine. I don't dance either, as people who remember the second series of Strictly Come Dancing.
Dancing, yeah.
Remember. Yeah, and certainly Antoine Beck will remember.
Antoine Beck, it's your partner, wasn't it?
Poor chap. Anyway, so I remember that we got a review in the Daily Mail by a very celebrated theatre critic called Jack Tinker, who said, Esther Ranson, Jan Leeming and Gloria Hunniford sang Anything You Can Do, I Can Do Better, and proved they couldn't. Anyway, at the end of our, it was rather a slightly worrying routine because the musical director decided to take it rather slowly. Now, if you're doing a dance routine and singing, and the music is rather slow, you tend to wobble. So I wobbled a bit, both vocally and on my legs. Anyway, at the end of it all, we all lined up to meet the Queen Mother. And when she came to us, she looked wonderful, the way she always does, you know,
Yeah.
that beautiful, rather a big, lacy, wonderful dress, like the Fairy Queen. And she got to us and she said, well, you must have been relieved when that was over. And so we thought to ourselves, maybe she was too. But and she actually, she enjoyed the whole event. It was great fun.
Yeah.
I felt very honoured to have performed in front of Her Majesty, even if I may not have done Irving Berlin justice.
I'm sure that was great fun. Wonderful.
I haven't ever asked Gloria and Jan what they remember of it, but as I say, they had the unfair advantage of being able to sing.
You had them on either side of you.
I certainly did. And I was the cowgirl, and I kept the sort of fancy dress for family parties for a long time. It was very nice, actually. Cowgirl hat and a fringe skirt. But nobody ever invited me
to perform it again.
No, nobody ever asked me to do it again.
Oh, wonderful. That's wonderful. So I think you're probably most famous for presenting the BBC television programme That's Live. We believe you did this for over 21 years, and you know it's a show of hard-hitting investigations, satire, and some light entertainment as well at the same time. I mean, I imagine you must have had so much fun making this programme over the years, and I have you know, very fond memories of a child of the funny moments, you know, the vegetables that used to come in all strange shapes, and then I think it was the dog was the most profound for me that said sausages, you know. I think my Labrador was very sadly unobliging at the time. He didn't want to participate in that one. So what was your most standout moments making this programme, Esther?
Well, so many, 21 years, you know, and as you rightly say, some ludicrous and funny, and I remember meeting Annie Mizzen in the street markets. She was a lovely old lady. Yeah. She became a star at the age of 86 and was opening fetes and giving her autographs because she was so funny. And I always say to people, star quality is not the same. You don't have to be, you know, beautiful. You don't have to be Elizabeth Taylor or Marilyn Monroe. Annie Mizzen became a star, and she was 86 years old, and she wore a brown felt hat, brown wool coat, glasses, white hair, but she was naughty. And that's what did her so much to the British public. She was mischievous and naughty and funny. And I learned a lot about her, Annie. She left school at 14, even though her teachers wanted her to stay on because she was so bright, but her parents couldn't afford for her to stay on. So she became a cleaning lady, and she was a cleaning lady all her life. And actually, she cleaned the dance studios where the Queen and Princess Margaret learnt to dance.
Oh,
So
okay.
there's a
Funny studios. Yeah.
but the Queen Mum must have picked it. Anyway,
Yeah.
so her daughter, Audrey, became a teacher, and her grandson, Toby, came and worked with us as a researcher. So she became a dear friend. I loved Annie. So so there were characters like that.
Yes, yeah.
If you have a look at YouTube and Facebook, you'll see another well-known moment in the show where we revealed Sir Nicholas Winton, who was the man who saved a generation of Jewish children.
That's correct. Yeah.
From the Holocaust. And we were able to introduce him to some of the people he'd saved, who, of course, were by now quite middle-aged, and they didn't know who'd saved them, and he'd never met them before. So that was a lovely moment and very moving. We launched Childline on Life.
Absolutely.
So there was so much going on because it was it covered such a range. You know, I was very, I think, clever. I invented the title That's Life, and I think I was quite clever to invent that because it meant that anything that happened to people in their lives we could include, and that's meant we had
and talk about, and be it funny or be it serious. It was entertainment, wasn't it? At the time, it was.
And at the end, people always write to me and say that when the program ended, they'd always found something in it which was valuable, some bit of consumer advice or something that they should avoid, be careful of, like dangerous children's playgrounds we talked about, and the fact that you have to keep children in seatbelts in cars.
I remember those very clearly, the tarmac on the playgrounds. And,
that's right.
Yeah.
So there were the serious campaigns, and there was the fun, and there were the characters.
The humour.
So much to remember.
Yeah, absolutely. And the show, as you said, the show was responsible for your launch of Childline, and that was in 1986, I believe. Yeah. And are you able to tell us a little bit about this and how you became involved with it and how you set it all up? This, it's an incredible service, especially obviously recently during the past few months. It must have been a lifeline for many, many children.
I think it has been. Well, we were doing a big program about child abuse and trying to work out if there were ways that we could protect children and young people more effectively, because there were always these tragedies where children were hurt, sometimes even killed, and we discovered too late that they'd been abused or neglected. And we decided to run a survey to ask adults if they had themselves suffered as children, to see if we could find some sort of pattern which would enable us to help the children of today. But because of this enormous range of subjects, we knew we had lots and lots of children watching us because they loved the talking dog.
Yeah, loved the talking dog.
So I decided we ought to open a helpline after the program, just in case any of the children watching the show needed help. So that's what we did. And for the 48 hours that it was open, the lines were all jammed with children mainly talking about sexual abuse, but talking about all kinds of abuse that they hadn't been able to talk about safely to anyone, because they thought if they asked for help, things would get worse for them.
Yeah.
And that's what gave me the idea. And I remember it very clearly, coming in on the Monday after the program went out on the Sunday, and the social workers who were in charge of the phone lines telling me about the children who they said, because they were talking about it to somebody who didn't blame them and didn't think it was their fault and did think that they had the right to be safe. And that gave them confidence and made them feel stronger and more able to ask for help. And I realized, listening to that it was the most important thing that I'd ever been involved with.
Yeah.
I don't think there can be anything more important than protecting children from pain. So that's what gave me the idea that if we were able to create a phone line which would be open 24 hours a day, every day of the year, then very many more children could be helped the same way. And that's why we launched it on the Child Watch program. And that first night, October the 30th, 1986, there were 50,000 attempted calls that first night.
That's incredible, isn't it? Yeah. So
and I've just been listening at lunchtime today to a terrible litany of abuse that happened in a London borough in 5 of their children's homes, which the survivors, now adult, were talking about. And some of that must have been going on when we opened Childline, but so much abuse happened. So many people tell me that they wish Childline had been there for them.
Earlier for them, yeah, absolutely, yeah. It's an incredible service. And then obviously not content with setting up that one, you then moved on to starting another amazing charity called Silverline. Maybe you'd like to tell us a little bit about this one, Esther.
Well, what happened was about 10 years after my late husband, Desmond Wilcox, you perhaps remember his amazing documentaries. He died in 2000, year 2000. About 10 years after that, my house had got a bit big for me, the way they do. And so I decided to downsize, and I moved into a 2-bedroom flat in what I describe as little old lady land, and was living alone for the first time.
Yeah,
and not liking it.
Yeah, imagine.
And I realized that, so I wrote about it in the Daily Mail, and it got huge response from other people who said that I described my feelings of loneliness, and they said it's very difficult to admit to that because there's a real stigma about admitting to feeling lonely, it seems.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was invited to speak at a conference which was run by a group of charities called Campaign to End Loneliness. And I remember standing up at the conference and saying to the audience there, 25 years previously, I'd been talking to a different audience. Then it was an audience who were specialists in protecting children. Now it was an audience of people looking after older people. I was talking about a different stigma then. It was the stigma of child abuse then, because that's very difficult for children to ask for help. And now it was the stigma of loneliness, which makes it very difficult for older people to ask for help.
Yeah, yeah.
And I said to the audience, then the idea was a helpline, the Childline. Do you think the answer now to help older people suffering from isolation and loneliness might be a helpline? And that all the experts said yes. So I spent a year making contacts, taking notes, traveling around the country, meeting anybody who'd got a helpline for older people. And then I went to the Minister for Care Services, who was a man called Paul Burstow, a very nice man who cared about isolated older people. And he gave me enough money to hire the CEO. So I hired Sophie Andrews, who I'd met at the NSPCC because she used to run their volunteering. Yeah. And she created the Silverline, and now it's part of Age UK.
Fantastic. Wonderful. And again, that must have been vital to many, many people now recently with all the lockdowns and isolations everyone's been going through over the past few months. Amazing. So, I mean, not just aside from the charity, all your amazing charity work, Esther, I mean, you produced many, many television programs. I think you were the first person to start a reality TV program with the Big Time, wasn't it? And that launched the career of lovely Sheena Easton. And yeah, I mean, and a whole new genre of television with the reality TV. Are you still in contact with Sheena at all?
Last time I saw her, she was appearing in the West End. She lives in America now.
Yes, she does. Yeah, yeah.
She was in a musical, and I went round backstage and met her. And she's extremely talented. But I did meet somebody who was a great fan of that program, particularly the one with Sheena Easton, whose name was Simon Cowell.
I was going to ask you, have you?
What happened to him?
I was actually going to ask you, has he ever been in contact with you for advice on setting up his programs?
Yes, he did. I think he was in dispute with Simon Fuller as to who had invented Pop Idol and American Idol and all those.
Yeah.
And he took me to a very nice lunch at the Ivy. Because actually it wasn't really his idea and it wasn't really Simon Fuller's idea, it was my idea.
Your idea, exactly.
On that side we did something called Search for a Star.
That's yeah.
So that's where the idea originated, and then of course he saw that. He was the record producer we hired. And then he saw the big time, and the combination of the two made him think, well, you know, there is a format here.
Brilliant, wonderful. Perhaps you should have done the filming of the auditions as well, Esther. That would have been quite entertaining.
we did for That's Life. It was hilarious. We did that. Yes, we certainly did. What we didn't do, which was his masterstroke, was we didn't put the judges in vision. We did all our judging off stage. So that's inspiration. But I think, you know, he's got rather a large yacht and homes in the Caribbean and America and London. So maybe he could spare me a quarter of his yacht.
I think, absolutely. I think you should have some royalties in there. Wonderful. And in reality TV, you are not afraid of taking part in it yourself. We've seen you popping up on our screens in The Chase, Pointless, Celebrity First Dates. That must have been quite daunting at the time, I can imagine. And Strictly Come Dancing with the gorgeous Anton de Beck, which again must have been great fun, despite not liking dancing. But and then the big I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, which, you know, would you like to tell us a little bit about Time in the Jungle? That must have been quite an experience for you.
Well, that was my favourite of all those. That was the one I enjoyed the most.
Yeah.
Strictly was too frightening to enjoy. I mean, it is so frightening.
So frightening, yeah. I can imagine.
No muscle memory and you can't dance like me. But it was lovely. Obviously, it was lovely to meet Anton, and we've remained friends ever since. He's a wonderful of Childline. He whenever he takes part in one of these quiz programs, he always wins great sums of money and gives it to Childline, which is lovely.
Yeah.
But the Jungle, I loved it because they took away your watch and they took away your mobile phone, and you woke up when the sun rose and you went to sleep again when the sun set, and there was all this wonderful greenery around you, and the only sound was cameramen belching in various hidden places in the rocks. So no, I loved it. It was great fun, and I met Joe Swash, who actually won that year, and is a delightful person. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think you had a good connection with him in the Jungle, didn't you? lots of fun together. Yes. So how long were you actually in the Jungle for, Esther?
I have no idea. I didn't get voted out first. The first person that got voted out was Robert Kilroy Silk, because he kept being voted by the public to do more and more and more of the challenges of the tests, the Bush Tucker trials and so on. And that was because he was so entertaining, because he kept losing his temper. And I kept saying to him, Robert, why don't you try and be less interesting? Then you won't have to do so much.
Do what to do, yeah.
It was funny, yes. And I hold the record for being buried underground in a coffin with the lid chained down and showered with scorpions and spiders. I think I was there for 47 minutes. And Martina Navratilova could only stand about a minute, and then she said she was a celebrity and she wanted to get out of there.
Oh, gosh. So how did you manage? Because that's the bit I look at and just think I could definitely not do. I could eat the bugs and things, but so what went through your head while you were in that box?
You just have to do a bit of auto hypnosis. You have to persuade yourself you're somewhere else.
else. Yeah.
and the bugs are something else. So I persuaded myself that I was in a warm, cozy bed on a cold November night, telling a whole lot of children the story of Cinderella. And every time they showered me with more spiders, I pretended they were more children joining me to hear the story.
Wonderful.
What happens for you? My advice is put your brain somewhere else.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic, great advice. So so moving on to your chat, I mean, you've been patron now of around 55, patron and vice patron of around 55 charities, and obviously mainly focusing on children, older people, and of course disabled people. Why would you say these areas are so important to you?
I think all of us have a sort of, when we decide to support a cause, there has to be some sort of personal connection.
Yeah.
And now I'm living permanently in the New Forest, which I never thought would happen, entirely due to COVID, because we've got this cottage here, and I happened to be here when lockdown happened. In fact, I self-isolated on March the 14th, and Boris didn't decide to go into lockdown until March the 23rd, so I was a bit ahead of the game. But
with most things, Esther.
But it's so lovely here, watching the seasons change and getting away from the chaos of a big city, that I decided to sell my flat. So my little 2-bedroom flat in little old lady land belongs to someone else now. And this is now my home.
Lovely.
But it has totally changed my life. And I must say, my late husband used to think that we would retire here. And I used to laugh at him and say, we'll never retire. And even though I haven't retired, I do think that he was right. And this is the right decision for me to make at this time. Yeah.
Yeah. And a nicer place to be over the last few months.
Yes.
Appreciating the countryside. So what have you done? You know, have you enjoyed the experience in some ways?
Well, I'm lucky
enough to have quite a challenge being so naturally very busy. Yeah.
But both a challenge, and I mean, the thing that I've enjoyed is being in my garden, because I'm very lucky to have a garden, and being able to. Right now, I'm looking at some hydrangeas in various colours of blue and lilac and pink. And before, I used to come down for the weekend and I'd just get a snapshot. But now I can really watch them coming into bud and coming into bloom. So that's been lovely. And my grandchildren like it here too, which is very fortunate.
Yeah.
But of course, the challenge is not being able to hug them when we were in complete lockdown. And not being able to see my friends, not being able to go to the theatre or go to the cinema, or go to the conferences and the events. I mean, all of it, having a virtual cream tea. Wouldn't it be lovely if we could all be in the same place and eat our cream teas together?
Yeah, absolutely. Moving that way now. Hopefully. Yeah, no, it's been a challenging time for everyone, hasn't it? And there's some, you've got a coat of arms, haven't you, with some amazing motto on it. If not now, when? So, what inspired you to choose these words?
Well, I was slightly annoyed with Boris when he did one of his press conferences and said, that Monday was going to be Freedom Day. If not now, when? And I thought, wait a minute. But I can't claim credit for it, because it was Rabbi Hillel many, many, many years ago who said, if I am not for me, who will be? If I am only for me, what am I? If not now, when? So I just picked the end of that. I was going to... somebody suggested I ought to have That's Life as
your motto. Yeah.
But I thought that was a bit difficult to translate.
Yeah.
And then my daughter said, when I'm faced with a challenge, what I do is I try and find a way around it. So my motto ought to be, if you can't get over it, get around it. when people say no to me, or that's not allowed, or that's impossible.
You
When we
always,
started child, somebody told us it was impossible. You know, if you say to me that's impossible, I try and find a way of making it
Yeah.
possible.
turn it into a challenge.
Then I tried to translate it into Latin and it didn't work, so I gave that one up too.
Brilliant, wonderful. And you know, and so finally, what would you, what advice would you give yourself, your younger self? No.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it?
Mm.
What age are you picking? Because it depends how old I am, my younger self.
Your younger self, I would say your 20s. Let's say 20s.
In my 20s. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I would say to myself in my 20s, I was quite fat until I was 25. So if you pick a time before I'm 25, I minded being fat. I would say to myself, don't worry, you won't be fat for the rest of your life, but there's a price for everything, you know, like the wicked fairy godmother. And the difficulty is that I now don't much like food. So that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah,
I used to love food and put on weight, and now I don't put on weight, but so there's that. I was always a little bit worried about the future. I didn't know whether I'd be lucky enough to get married and have children. I didn't know if I'd ever find a job I really enjoyed, because I didn't find a job. I got a job as a researcher, which I absolutely loved, but not until I was 25. So if I'm going to talk to myself before the age of 25,
yeah,
I would say, don't worry, it's going to turn out better than you might think. So
yeah.
So that's but if it's after 25, if it's somewhere around, I did my first television program when I was 28. I would say to myself, see if you can get a better work-life balance, because That's Life was a very, very complicated, difficult, challenging program to make. And I was really never off duty. And that came along when I was 33. And I worked really, really hard from the moment I joined television. And I think my own children would say to me, Mum, I think we would have liked a little bit more of your time.
Yeah, yeah.
We had lovely holidays together, and I really prized the time I spent with them. But looking back and seeing how much fun I had with my grandchildren, I wonder to myself whether it would have been sensible of me. But then that's your career, and now I guess you've given everything you've got to all your grandchildren, much to the annoyance of your children. And also, I don't really believe in regrets. I think one ought to move forward rather than regret what's happened in the past. So,
absolutely.
So maybe it was all meant to be the way it is.
Absolutely. And we wouldn't have had that snipe. You've given so much to so many people in your career, Esther. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us today and giving us your time and supporting the lovely Queen Elizabeth Foundation, which is a very, very dear charity to myself. And I just wish everybody a lovely, lovely afternoon today, having their cream tea parties. And thank you, Esther, once again. I think it's time now to pour our Queen Mother's favourite cocktail with our lovely mixologist. Thank you.
That sounds absolutely delicious. And can I say congratulations to all the staff and volunteers who have made this lovely tea party happen. And let's hope this time next year we'll be all meeting in the same place and being able to drink each other's health in the martini. Is it Dubonnet?
Dubonnet, yeah, martini Dubonnet.
Wonderful.
Yes, hopefully we'll put it all together in one big tea party.
Okay, well, you're very good.
Lovely. And to you, Esther, thank you so much. Take care. Thank you.
Wow, Thank you so much, Philippa and Dame Esther Ranson. I do hope you all enjoyed the Q&A. And you're right, we're now going to move over to our mixologist. Now, such as live TV, live events, unfortunately, our mixologist, our celebrity mixologist, Merlin Griffiths from First Dates, has unfortunately been taken ill. So we are very lucky and privileged today to have a young man who is actually an avid supporter of the Queen Elizabeth Foundation. He recently took part in a challenge event in aid of the Queen Elizabeth Foundation, and he actually has his own little bar called Harry's House of Cocktails, and he today is going to be taking us through how to make the Queen Mother's favourite. You'll find it in your packs, the gin and bonnet, and then de bonnet, excuse me, and then also as well the Royal Aviation cocktail, which is from a cocktail which is a version that is served from the Savoy Hotel, just for you today. So over to you, Harry.
Hi there guys, it's Harry from Harry's House Cocktails here. I hope you're enjoying the Queen's Tea event. Today I'm going to show you how to make two cocktails, the Dubonnet cocktail and the Royal Aviation. So first we're going to start with the Dubonnet cocktail. It's the Queen Mother's favourite and it uses this sweet red wine aperitif based drink, Dubonnet. And that's going to be your main ingredient. So you're going to have 50 mils of Dubonnet. You're going to add that to your short glass. And then you're going to have a single shot of any London dry gin, whatever you want. Pour it in your glass. Stir. The Queen likes to have hers with 2 cubes, and mine are a bit smaller, so I'm using a couple extras. I'm going to garnish it with a lemon, and that is your first one. That is the Dubonnet cocktail. Up next we have the Royal Aviation. So we're going to shake it and double strain it. We're going to be using Bombay Sapphire for this. It's one of my favourite gins. So 40 mils Bombay Sapphire. Then we're going to use 20 mils of any maraschino liqueurs. I'm using Luxardo. We've got blue pea flower tea. Again, 20 mils of that. And then we just want some lemon juice. 15 mils of lemon juice. We're going to shake and double strain it. It's your choice. It's preferred to be garnished with cherry. However, I have it with that. And there we are, Royal Aviation. Cheers.
Thank you so much, Harry, for stepping in last minute. It's wonderful to have such talented supporters, so thank you for that. We now have a presentation from biographer and historian Hugo Vickers. Now, Hugo is a writer and broadcaster who's written biographies for many 20th century figures, including our very own Queen Mother. So we're really excited to hear from you today, Hugo. So over to you, please introduce yourself.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Hugo Vickers, and it's my great privilege to join you by Zoom as you enjoy your cream tea this afternoon on the 121st anniversary of the Queen Mother's birth. I was lucky to have met the Queen Mother a great number of times between 1968 and 2001, and to have written her biography. So I spent a lot of time thinking about her during my life. The first meeting was rather fascinating. At school, I alleviated the boredom of Sunday afternoons by showing tourists around St George's Chapel, Windsor Castle. And one afternoon, I was placed on a door where the new King George VI Memorial Chapel was being built. The Queen came round the corner all alone, and after what seemed like an endless silence, asked me if I was a chapel guide. I had a badge on me saying chapel guide at the time. A moment later, the Queen Mother appeared and with hand outstretched asked my name. "Oh yes," she said, and I wondered for weeks afterwards if the Dean had possibly mentioned that one day we would meet. No, of course he hadn't. It was her way of making a 16-year-old very happy. And that was her philosophy of life. If you came into her orbit, she wanted you to go away feeling happier. Not everyone does that. Well, how to encapsulate nearly 102 years into a few minutes? She was the 9th of 10 children of the Earl of Strathmore. She had many older brothers, so she grew up quickly in their company. The family migrated from one house to another, including Glamis Castle in Scotland. The First World War broke out on her 14th birthday, and she spent the next 4 years of adolescence cheering up the wounded soldiers, great training for her later life. She came out in 1919 and was a huge hit, very popular. She caught the eye of the shy Duke of York, and to his credit, he pursued her against all odds, proposing 3 times between 1920 and 1923 until she finally accepted him. Having done so, she threw herself into creating a happy home for him, overcoming his stammer and bringing up Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret. Here she is in 1931, about 4 years before she opened the first training centre. The death of George V in January 1936 was followed, but months later, by the abdication of King Edward VIII. This propelled the Duke and Duchess of York onto the throne. Interestingly, the Illustrated London News showed how very simple it was to transfer from one king to another. They simply wiped out the head of Edward VIII and they popped the head of George VI on their picture instead. But the king and queen were worried as to whether the British people would want them. The new king only wanted to be a good constitutional monarch, and the strength and support of his wife made this possible. The war established them both firmly in the hearts of the nation. And interestingly, Queen Elizabeth always remained a civilian during the war. She never ever wore uniform. And here again, you see a very happy scene at Royal Lodge, the family, us 4, as the king called them, all having their breakfast together. But after the war, the king's health broke down and Queen Elizabeth effectively operated as head of state. He only appeared occasionally. His death in 1952 caused another change. The Queen Mother stepped aside as the Queen and Prince Philip took over, but she was only 51. Years of active life stretched ahead of her, in fact, for half a century. She was no longer the quiet power behind the throne, but she occupied a role best described as diplomatic, ambassadorial, and social. As such, she travelled to many Commonwealth countries, such as Rhodesia, Australia, New Zealand, and many times to Canada. She became a universally loved figure, and she never disappointed. She would come out at the age of 100 with a temperature of 100 in order to fulfill an engagement. She never disappointed the general public. And here I've got 3 photographs, one of me talking to her after dinner, one I took of her going round an exhibition, one of her at another of these dinners, which was rather fun because it looks like a portrait, which it wasn't quite. And here is a picture of my son. He was lucky enough to give her some flowers on her 101st birthday, 20 years ago today. He was only 2 years old, and the Queen Mother died very soon afterwards on the 30th of March, 2002. This is her last Christmas card, and she rather liked it. Warmer Castle. She said, "Do you like the cannons?" And people were a little bit surprised. Then she said, "They're pointing towards France." It is traditional to buy presents on birthdays. It would be wonderful if you could remember the Queen Mother by donating to the Queen Elizabeth Foundation, by using the details in your packs. As Duchess of York in 1935, the Queen Mother opened an employment training college for people with disabilities at Leatherhead Court. At the end of March 1935, a film was shown at Bush House in the Aldwych, demonstrating the methods used in New Jersey to treat and rehabilitate people suffering from industrial and other accidents. In those days, there was no adequate scheme for the treatment of people disabled in industrial accidents, nor satisfactory plans to find re-employment for the same disabled people. Treatment of the disabled was described in the Times as a triumph of modern medicine and surgery, and the training college was established to enable the injured who could not be absorbed into industry in the normal way to become fitted by suitable training for other work. As was said at the time of the opening, work is part of the bodily mechanism of restoration. Most important of all, perhaps, it is the foundation of self-confidence and mental health. To bring this excellent therapy to those who seemed perhaps to have lost it forever is an enterprise of the highest order of merit. And at the opening ceremony, the Duchess of York described the new college as much needed. It offered an opportunity to become once more fitted for employment. The patients treated there could look forward to the reward of active independence. There were already patients there, and some of the young men presented the Duchess with 2 miniature garden frames on ebonite, a present for Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret. And you will be glad to know that the Duchess remained to tea after opening the college. Well, this scheme developed into the Queen Elizabeth Foundation. In November 2019, the Edward Guinness Appeal was launched to fund and complete a new care and rehabilitation centre, a centre for neuro rehabilitation excellence in the heart of Surrey. And specifically, this appeal includes the installation of additional lifts, funds accessible technology in all the bedrooms so that clients can have greater independence and control over their environment, and completes the landscaping so that clients are able to enjoy the tranquil surroundings. So much of the Queen Mother's life was devoted to making the lives of others better, and it is fantastic that this work continues today in her name. Finally, I'd like to wish you a hugely enjoyable afternoon, and I want to thank you for your incredible support of the Queen's Tea in aid of the Edward Guinness Appeal. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you so much, Hugo. It's wonderful to hear such lovely stories about our late patron, the Queen Mother. I do hope you all enjoyed that. And as Hugo touched on there about what we're fundraising for today, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Karen Deacon, the CEO of the Queen Elizabeth Foundation.
Thank you so much, Hayley, and thank you to all our speakers so far. And I've had messages during this day, this afternoon, what a wonderful event we're having already. So thank you everybody for joining us. The Queen Mother was very special to us, as you just heard from Hugo, and the history is very well established. She was very, very loyal to our clients, and she was very, very loyal to in her attendance. You can see her here in these pictures where she attended, meeting some of our patients who were there, getting back to work, getting back towards independence. We've now had this tradition followed on, and in June we had Her Royal Highness, the Countess of Wessex, come and open our centre. We were absolutely delighted about her coming to open. And whilst she was opening it, she met this young man who you just saw there called Sean, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about him later. She clearly wasn't allowed in the building. We're not allowed to do that yet, but she spent a great deal of time sitting, talking to clients, understanding how their story had evolved, understanding what their needs were, and how we as an organisation had enabled their more freedom and independence. So I'm thrilled that she's been part of that, and she's keen to continue her support. So we're also even happier about that going forward. The Countess was greatly touched by this young man called Sean, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about him later on. But there was also clients here that she recognised needed additional support that they weren't going to get staying in the NHS. That's not to criticise the NHS, it's a matter of fact that there just isn't the level of support required to get people back on their feet and quickly. The Edward Guinness Appeal was launched because they helped recognise this with us. When I went to meet Edward Guinness, now some 2 years ago, he clearly understood the need. He clearly understood the passion we all had to deliver a wonderful service in a new building to a greater number of people, to give them a possibility of a future. We can't change their past, but we can help their future. And it's a great pleasure we launched the Edward Guinness Appeal, and Edward made a significant contribution both in time and commitment, and has his family going forward. We're absolutely thrilled by that carrying on as well. Edward, I also know you may be watching, and I know you have had a bit of a rough few months, and our love goes to you all and your family to keep well for the future. So today we've opened our new unit during what has to be the most difficult of time. However, it's not completely finished, but we did feel that we really needed to push on and open this because we felt we needed to be part of a solution during the pandemic. The Edward Guinness Appeal is now halfway through, and our aim is to reach the £2.7 million target. That's not an easy target, and it certainly feels like an even more difficult target during a pandemic. However, many charities have been affected, but we wanted to make sure that we were there as part of the solution, as part of the helpful future planning for individuals who needed us. And we now have very much established our place in that and that role in that going forward. Never more has at the NHS have individual clients needed us, and never more has it been more important that we raise this money. So in the first month, we lost £1 million in fundraising. However, my amazing team that you've met some of today, and people such as the Guinness family, have enabled us to create a much smaller gap than we had over a year ago. That £1 million would have really hurt in our ability to open the building and commit to things going forward to making people's lives better. However, we have managed to close that gap very significantly, but we're still a long way off the 2.7 million. Unfortunately, many events got cancelled and some are still to happen, but we now actually do have dates. And as Esther said to us earlier, let's hope this is only the second and last virtual Queen's Tea. I really hope we're having a real one, and maybe people who can't join us, I know we've got people from abroad, they can join us too virtually. We can have a hybrid event. So we've been needed more. We've been needed more by a greater a range of people. So we currently are supplying services, obviously to Surrey, but also to Kent, Hampshire, Essex, and South West London. And really, we are getting referrals all the time. So we originally planned to open the ground floor. We've already been pushed up to the top floor into one wing, and we've got one more wing we really need to open. We've recruited some amazing therapists and we've recruited some amazing staff. Recruitment is hard, and it's going to be harder over the next few months, particularly how vaccines are working as well. However, QEF do not look at the difficulties. We consider them a challenge and we jump how high. And I think that's really what Esther was saying. We don't find a hurdle that we can't get over. We find a way around it. And that's certainly been our mantra over the last year. We support clients who've had strokes, clients who've had acquired brain injury. And we've also taken a group of patients you won't be surprised at who have had COVID, who've had long COVID and also have had strokes whilst on a ventilator. When COVID was first discovered and clients were coming off of the ventilator, it was very fast realised that they were having a major impact on their brain function. Unfortunately, the clotting that was causing the strokes wasn't picked up at the beginning because everybody didn't know much about COVID, and a lot of them were left with quite significant injury and impact to their lifestyles. That's where we come in. We've also taken some new clients for spinal injuries, and all of those clients need intensive support. If I just said to you, we have 30, if we had 30 clients, we'd need at least 60 staff to look after those 30 clients. That's the level of support our clients need. So I'm going to introduce you now to a young man who some of us obviously know quite well. Sean is a young man whose whole world was turned upside down. It's very clear we couldn't change his past, but we very much are trying to be part of his future. We want to give him one of a future of greater independence, enabling him to choose where he goes, when he goes, and how he can communicate. His story is told to you by his mum, Jenny, and it just shows what we can do on that road to recovery. I'm going to introduce you to Sean now.
Sean's mum, Jenny, recounts his experience over the last couple of years. Sean was studying and doing his masters at Imperial College and had just finished his exams when in March 2019, he had a very serious accident and suffered a traumatic brain injury. He was picked up by London Air Ambulance, who took him to the Royal London Hospital in Whitechapel. He had several very large surgeries that saved his life. He was in a coma for a very long time, a complete coma with no response at all for 2 months. After that, he started opening his eyes. In June 2019, he was transferred to Putney, where they treat people with persistent disorders of consciousness. He started to emerge by moving his fingers first, then his hands, then his arm. And he was able to answer questions with a yes or no using a big switch. After a couple of trips back to Whitechapel following complications, in December 2019, he was transferred to a rehab stream in Putney, and he started to improve. He was at Putney for over a year, and then we were looking at what his next steps would be, and he got a place at the Queen Elizabeth Foundation in Leatherhead, their new care and rehabilitation centre. We were delighted, and he has gone from strength to strength here. When he got to QEF, he was just beginning to use his mechanical hoist to get in and out of bed. Now he can transfer out of bed himself, and he started walking with his frame. Sean wasn't able to talk for his first year. Then he was only able to whisper, but now he's able to talk well. He's just working on his clarity. I can understand what he says, even though he has to work hard to get some people to understand him. He is able to use a whiteboard sometimes, but he's also great at WhatsApp and social media with his friends. He can definitely write text messages. His mobility is getting there. We set him 2 challenges. The first was to virtually cycle from Surrey to Dublin, his hometown, which was 624 kilometres, which he did on his exercise bike, and he completed it ahead of time. His next challenge is to walk from his room at the QEF to the front door and walk out of it on the day that he goes home. He's nearly there. We've been practicing every day for the last week, and he's doing really, really well, just having to take one little break at reception. We really think, with the support of his walker, he'll be able to do it. Sean's going back to the National Rehabilitation Hospital in Dublin, which is very close to our home. We're making the house ready so he can have full access, and his friends can't wait to see him. They are very excited for him to finally come home. The future for Sean is hopeful that he continues to progress. His master's in machine learning and artificial intelligence is half done. He just has to complete a summer project, which he may or may not get back to. He has a job open with Amazon if and when he's able to come back to it. We don't really know what the future holds, but he's going to walk again, and he's going to gain more and more independence. He's a very determined young man. He will never give up. Thank you.
Thank you. I always get the hard job of following those stories. And having met Sean, I understand the impact of him walking to that front door. It was enormous to the day that I first met him and seeing what level of ability he came to us with. So thank you very much for participating and listening today. And I hope you'll see the value of your continued support. The Guinness family certainly have seen that and why they're still supporting us going forward. And these stories, such as Sean, make that huge impact statement for us about why we're here and why we need to be here in the future. If you wish to make a donation, there are 3 ways you can do that. The first one, and we're going to put the information in the chat line for you, so you can just copy and paste it from there. The second one, as we said earlier, is in your pack. It's all in your Queen's Tea pack, and inside it says how to make a donation. After the event, we'll send you a link, which will also give you a link of how to make a donation, but also access to the event online. We really do thank you for supporting us, and we cannot change what happened to Sean. We cannot change his past. We cannot change his injury. However, we can help build him a future, and with your help, we can do that quicker, better, and to more people. The Countess of Wessex, when she visited, was personally moved by Sean as he aimed to complete his walk, and his mother shared that story. We filmed that walk and shared it with her a week after that happened. Since then, she's been in touch. She's written to him personally, and having seen the video of his achievement, we're absolutely thrilled by her involvement going forward. And many of us have sons, daughters, husbands, wives, parents, who we always wish are safe and well. If in the future, we don't know what that holds, and you need QEF, we promise we will be there for you. We promise with your support, we can be there for more of you. Thank you for today, and thank you for your commitment today. And here's to everybody's brighter future.
Thank you, Karen. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. We have come to the end of the 2021 Queen's Tea. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your continued support. Like Karen said, if you would like to look at our auction or make a donation, we'll be sending you an email immediately after this event. Alternatively, you can check now in the chat button. So all that leaves me to say is happy birthday to Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. And finally, we're going to be played out by the trumpeters of the Welsh Guard. Thank you.